Hi, I'm Tom Scioli, author of Godzilla's Monsterpiece Theater. This is issue 3, which is on sale now.
I'm Matt Zeoli.
So, Matt, we've been talking about these Star Trek novelizations. And so now I'm up to Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. And you can borrow this and read it.
Can't wait.
So I just wanted to talk a little bit about this, give you a little heads up.
Hell yes.
And tell everybody, because this is great. This is really, really good. Of course, Star Trek 1, Star Trek the Motion Picture, it's kind of mind-blowing the way it kind of completely changes your perspective on the story. But this one is not as, revolutionary or, turning things on its head. But it makes the story of Search for Spock so much richer. And the first 80 pages of this is all stuff that happens before the movie even gets started. So the movie gets started somewhere after page 80 of this.
That's awesome.
So there's a ton of stuff in here, going on. They have Spock's wake. Everybody gets drunk on synthetic alcohol at Spock's wake. And then there's this romance between Saavik and David, Captain Kirk's son. And that's completely absent in the movie. In the movie, they're kind of look. The first time you see them, like I said, is maybe 100 pages into the book. The first time you see them, they're kind of looking at a computer screen together. But in the book, they've had this whole romance together. They've gone back to the set of Wrath of Khan. There's so much connective tissue in this book that gets you from Wrath of Khan to Search for Spock. There's all kinds of interim kind of stuff, and they kind of segue out of that world of Star Trek 2.
You were mentioning that someone that had read this book when it came out is they are the keepers of this secret Star Trek
Right, yeah, that I could imagine anybody who was reading these novelizations as they came out was probably walking around with this superior attitude of you guys don't know shit. I know something you don't know. To anybody who's oh yeah, Search for Spock, it's okay, or whatever. It's well, you know what? Maybe one of these days you'll pick up a book and maybe learn a thing or two. So, but it's a completely different experience. Saavik and David have a whole romance together, and it's really poignant. It's really nice. And then they go to the Genesis cave together, and then there's this weird plant because all the stuff from Genesis, it's having unintended consequences. So there's this plant that David had sort of designed that shows up in Genesis, but it's mutating rapidly. So you have some plant attack.
Oh, that's
stuff.
awesome.
The plant is kind of growing real fast and trying to get Saavik, and Saavik has to zap it with her phaser.
That's so cool.
But then it releases this hallucinogen, which makes them both act kind of silly and they've just sort of started their romance together. So now David's trying to steal her phaser and stuff. Another thing that is established in the Wrath of Khan book and then continues in here is that Saavik is half Romulan, half Vulcan. If you just go by the movies, she's full Vulcan. That's what you would assume. She's full Vulcan, unlike Spock, who's half human, half Vulcan. But in the books, she's half Romulan. And if you're half Romulan, half Vulcan, you're sort of rejected by both cultures. And so she grew up as an orphan on this sort of hell world. And Spock finds her as a child, and then, against, protocol or whatever, becomes sort of like a mentor to her, takes her under his wing, and, helps her. But she's got sort of the super strength of being a Vulcan, but she's also got this Romulan temper. So, like I was saying with Star Trek 2, when Scotty's nephew dies, she starts ripping chairs out of the, out of their moorings and throwing them. So in this, that impulse kind of continues. And so her character in the movie kind of sucks. Because again, it's full Vulcan. She's very cold. And so when David dies in the movie, she's kind of very cool about it. She's Captain, your son is dead. She's kind of, but in the book, it's like this is her, her boyfriend, or who dies, and she is completely torn up. And in the book, when the Klingons kill David, she goes on a rampage. She goes nuts, and she starts like killing Klingons with her bare hands and stuff.
Awesome.
And then they have to like barrage her with phasers to like get her to stop. Like she's just in this like she turns into Wolverine.
Berserker.
Yeah, she goes into this berserker thing, and they have to like just like keep zapping her, and like the phasers aren't doing anything.
Awesome.
Like eventually they have to, and she's just so destroyed by David dying. Now contrast that with the movie where it's just like, Captain, your son is dead.
It's a completely different experience here.
Yeah, and it's really great. And so when David dies in this, it's heartbreaking. Like in the movie, it felt like a contrivance. Like, oh, they're trying to get this guy out of the story ASAP. But in this book, with all this build up and their whole romance and stuff, it's like devastating.
With all these books, we're getting like extra movies on
extra
this.
Just
extra story, like
it is
more bang for our buck.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of shocking how far into the book you are before like the story really starts going. Like, and Saavik is sort of a character I never really connected with. How she
Kirstie Alley.
Yeah, Kirstie Alley.
Film debut.
Yeah, she's always by the book and stuff like that. And she's kind of like, you don't see her ever again after Search for Spock. Like she's out of the story. So, but with this, like if this material that's in the book, if more of that was in the movie, like they would have made it a point to bring her back. Like she would have been a major
player,
a major new character, because she is, her and David, like their story is kind of the heart of it. And then there's all this stuff, like they go back to Earth, and the whole team goes back to Earth. Like the movie kind of starts out there, like they're back on Earth, or they're flying into the space dock or whatever. But in the book, Scotty goes to his nephew's funeral. Scotty goes back to Scotland, and so there's this character who's Scotty's niece, like the sister of, and they mention her in the Wrath of Khan novelization. This character Danon, who is nowhere in the movie, but they mention her in Danon, and she's kind of rebellious. And then in Search for Spock, when he goes to the funeral, she's kind of a major character. And then there's this other guy who like gets a medal of bravery, but he feels like he doesn't deserve it because he abandoned his post. But the nephew, like all this great stuff.
That's great that Scotty goes like.
Yeah, you get some time with Scott, and everybody gets more moments. And then also, I just want to mention the author, Vonda McIntyre. Like she's sort of like a beloved author of sort of Star Trek books and stuff. And between the Wrath of Khan adaptation and this, I've really become a fan. Like I'm a fan.
Seek out more.
Oh, for sure. And I do. It's one of those things like where I just learned about her and I'm like super into her work, and then I find out like she died in 2018. So she
was right there.
Yeah, it's a bummer. And so I bought another Vonda McIntyre Star Trek book. It's called like First Enterprise. It's like Captain Kirk's first mission as captain of the Enterprise. So I can't wait to read that one. There's more fallout with the people who were part of the Genesis project in this also, and you find out that one of them is Carol Marcus's boyfriend, and there was like a big age gap. Like she was way older, and so Captain Kirk assumed that him and Carol can just like pick up where they left off, but she's like, hey, I'm in mourning for this guy that I was in love with, so don't think that I'm just going to jump right in your arms. And I don't think Carol Marcus is in Star Trek 3 at all. Like I think she's just like gone from the story. And I do wonder, because like that character Danon, who's Scotty's niece and stuff, I do wonder, like, because when you write a novelization, they do give you some leeway. Like it wouldn't be worth doing, like just for the paycheck. It's like they let you have some creative latitude. So I do wonder how much of these things, because she's going from one book to the other, how much of these things are her creation, like Danon, and so then it's like, oh, in this next book I'm going to expand that character. But another thing which plays out in like later movies, in Star Trek 3, when they're coming back, like when they get into the space dock and stuff, they see this new spaceship called the Excelsior that's all souped up, and Scotty, like they're talking about all the enhancements it has, and like Sulu in the movie is like very excited about all these enhancements. Like he's very impressed with all these new things that are happening with the Excelsior, and then Scotty kind of like downplays it. He kind of like shits on it a little bit because he likes the Enterprise. Well, in the book, they establish that part of why Sulu is so excited about the Excelsior is he helped design it because he's going to be the captain of the Excelsior. And if you remember in Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, he is the captain of the Excelsior. So it's all set up here. It's not set up in the movie, but it's in the book. That's
so fucking great because like when I'm little, I associate Sulu with the. I thought he always was.
Yeah.
Because when I first saw Star Trek VI, I'm like, oh, he's like.
Yeah, because there's no mention other than Sulu kind of lighting up when they're talking about all the gadgets that are on the Excelsior. There's no indication that, according to this book, he is going to be the like it's already set. Like as soon as they dock, he's going to be captain of the Excelsior, and that they talk about how Sulu is Captain Kirk's protege. Like Captain Kirk's kind of been training him to like kind of take over as like the guy, like the Captain Kirk as Kirk's role becomes like less and less.
Shatner,
when you think about the real what's going on in real life,
yeah, like the real like
maybe Shatner was like, hey, can we? Because that's another famous conflict between Shatner and George Takei is that Shatner kept trying to talk George Takei out of becoming the captain of the Excelsior in Star Trek VI because he's like, Georgie, all the action is on the Enterprise. You're right. You're not really going to be a captain in real life. Like you're writing yourself out of the movie. But like it was very important to George Takei that Sulu becomes this captain, and he does have this very major, like it's a small role in Star Trek VI, but it's important. Like he's the captain. He's the cavalry that comes to the rescue and stuff. But it's all being set up in Star Trek 3. And when they get to Space Dock in the book, they find out that like the whole Genesis thing has become very controversial. It's become like a political hot potato or whatever. So they decide that Sulu's not going to become the captain. They want Sulu to kind of keep things quiet, stay put. Eventually, we'll make you the captain, but for now, this other guy, Captain Styles, is going to be. And I'm picturing like Styles from Teen Wolf. This like captain with like the sunglasses on and stuff. Going,
they're like he's like, Captain, there's a werewolf doing backflips on the top of the Excelsior.
So there's all this stuff, and so Sulu is like livid. He is pissed that. He's about to take over, and he helped design the Excelsior, and he's about to become captain. And then they're told, "Oh, actually," and they still promote him to captain, but he's a captain with no ship. So it's kind of it's kind of embarrassing for him. And so then there's like this whole scene of him like angrily practicing Aikido.
Oh, this is
stuff. Dude. He's got like sticks out and stuff. Like all this amazing stuff is going. Like I am so in love with this book and the story in this book. And we've talked about Search for Spock, and we both like it.
Yeah.
But now it's like it would have been like as good as Wrath of Khan or better if they had more of this stuff,
And that cover too isn't something to sneeze at.
Yeah.
I'm kind of into. It's like a pulp. Yeah. It's like a Star Trek pulp cover.
Yeah, there's just so much great stuff, and like everything just means more, and all the characters kind of get their moment. There was another one I wanted to mention in the book. There's the Klingon ship. Oh, also, there's this like crew that kind of gives of like this weird little ship that gives the Klingons, like the Genesis plans, and then they blow up the ship. Like it's kind of early in the movie. In this book, that crew has their own, like a whole story of their own. You get to know all the characters, and it's a little bit like the Creature Cantina. Like there's a scene in the movie where it's like a bar, and it's kind of like the Creature Cantina. That scene's in here too. But that ship is kind of like that too, because there's like a cat person on board. Oh, there's like a bunch of different aliens. Awesome. And if you watch that scene, because then I watched the movie again and was watching it real closely, you kind of see like off to the side, there's this like weird looking alien guy who blows up. But there's all this intrigue on that ship, like before they even, and again, in this movie, in the movie, they show up and they blow up the ship. But there's a scene where the Klingon ship is cloaked. And Chekhov is just like looking at the empty space, and he notices like a little ripple to it, and he's like, "I think that's the ship." and then they're able to like sort of fire on that spot. That's in the book. In the movie, it's Shatner. It's Captain Kirk who's like, wait. Look, I can see there's a little shimmer. He's the one who spots the shimmer in the darkness and realizes it's so I can picture how that went too, where like Chekhov has this line, this scene, and then
a hero moment.
A hero moment. And Shatner's like, don't you think it would make more sense if Kirk spotted it? Like I'm just trying to make this a better story, not because it's going to give and those are the kind of stories that like all the other people in the cast had about Shatner, of like stealing their scenes and stuff.
He's like, his agent comes to the director. He's like, Bill wants to see you in the trailer. And he's like, I love what's going on here. He's like, I have some suggestions. And then he tries to talk Sulu to Kay out of being the captain.
Excelsior, because now all of a sudden he's kind of, his rationale when I've heard Shatner tell this story, he's like, hey, he thinks he's really going to be a captain, but he's writing himself out of the movie. But I think Shatner really does care, like about who's captain and who's not. It's like, Georgie, my equal, never. I'm not going to let that happen. But again, the fact that seed is planted in the Star Trek 3 novelization and then pays off 3 movies later, Star Trek 6. That's amazing. And again, somebody who like was reading these books and then is watching Star Trek 6 as it comes out was probably like, yeah, there he is. I knew it. I knew Sulu was going to show up. And it's also kind of a nice payoff because Sulu is so bummed about not getting to captain the Excelsior that like, it's kind of nice. It's like a nice payoff that you're waiting 3 movies for.
Dude, like I said, when I'm little, in the trailer, Takei's like, it's me. It's a trailer moment when he announced he's the captain of the Excelsior.
Yeah. After you read The Wrath of Khan, we'll talk about that book again. But yeah, after you read this, we'll talk about. But it's like, I can't recommend this highly enough. It's again, like if you felt like Star Trek 3 didn't quite do it for me, like this gives you another like a go round with it that's like amazing.
A shot in the arm.
Yeah, shot in the arm. And so then when you watch the movie after having read the book, watching Star Trek 3 again, like that first scene where Saavik and David show up in Star Trek 3, they're both looking at this computer screen together. And it's like knowing that they've just been like fucking and stuff. It's like you can see the actors. You can see David at least has this little like playful look in his eye as they're looking through, as like okay, because whether they shot those scenes or not, I'm sure they read some version of the script where it's like, oh yeah, these two are an item. So he's playing it. It's there.
This out of these 3 novelizations, Star Trek 3, is this your favorite read of the trio?
It's a tough call. I can sort of recommend this wholeheartedly without reservation. Like Star Trek, I think I liked Star Trek 1 better because like
that was great.
It kind of makes your hair stand up straight. but it's not for everybody. Where this is just like if you want like just a damn good yarn, like this is it. And the
I found myself like telling random people I've read the Star Trek novels, and then but they're just, I'm like, anyone that'll listen, I'm like, you gotta read Star Trek.
Yeah.
They're like,
drop everything and read that. But it's like, yeah, if you just want to enjoy like a cool Star Trek story, this is it. And again, there's a million different like little things, and we can go over like more than once. You've read the book, but like Christopher Lloyd's character's like a little more interesting. I always liked his Klingon.
Me too.
But in this, it's kind of like there's sort of like class things at play too, because he's kind of he's kind of like working class. He's like kind of this working class guy who sort of moved up the ranks. So there's interesting story stuff there, and then his pet. He has a cool pet.
Yeah,
that gets more scenes. That gets more action.
I love that.
Like it goes down to the planet with them, and it kind of like gets involved in some fights and stuff.
Very cool.
There's one other thing that I was wondering about, and again, it might take things back to like the Star Trek motion picture, like the kind of how Gene Roddenberry, like there was a lot of like sex and stuff in it. In this, Spock is he's like aging like the when Spock is sort of reborn, he is aging rapidly and stuff. And so then when he reaches like, adulthood or whatever, the Pon farr starts, which is when Vulcans start rutting. Like once every 7 years, like Vulcan males have to mate, or they'll die. Like it gets built up. And so this is in the like they talk about it in the movie and they talk about it in the book. But reading it in the book, it was making me wonder, because Saavik sits down with Spock, who's like now an adult, and she sits down with him and she's like, "You're going through the Pon farr. This is what's happening, and you got to trust me." And then she like puts her hands on his temples and then does some kind of like Vulcan thing to like calm him down. And similar thing happens in the book, and then it sort of cuts away, and then they come back. But in the book, they come back and then they say like, "Oh, Spock's hair is messed up" and stuff. So it made me wonder if like the way she got him to be relieved of the Pon farr is like she fucked him. She's like, "You gotta trust me." And then next scene, his hair's all messed up. Like she just like blew his mind. It's while David's away. Like David is like. Off like on some other mission, and then it made me wonder, like she's half Vulcan, so she's it's like, well, this is just logical. Like Spock will die if he doesn't have sex. So she's got
he comes out looking like Leslie Nielsen from the sperm bank scene in Naked Gun 33 and the third.
And so I just wonder if like as a matter of just taste, they were like, okay, this is what happens story-wise, and we're going to cut away, and people who are maybe a little more clued into things will know what happened. But it's like, it would be a little too much if we made it like really obvious that, oh yeah, she fucked Spock.
His hair looks like Jeff Daniels from Dumb and Dumber. He's like...
Yeah. There's another thing too. Like, so she's completely destroyed when David dies. But then also there's like a little extra thing where David is like dying, and there's like a Vulcan thing she can do to kind of prolong his like save him, but like he rejects it. Like David like kind of rejects it, and so she's not able to. So that's kind of heartbreaking too. And then, there's also another thing, like again in the beginning of the book, the Enterprise is sort of filled with the remains of all the people from like the Genesis Project and stuff. Everybody who's died, Scotty's nephew, like they shot Spock into space, but the rest of them, as per his wishes, but the rest of them are like going back home to be better, like Scott. And so she sits in the room where the bodies are being held, and kind of she stands guard over them, which is kind of like a ritual from when she was a child. In the night, like if somebody, like in this hell world that she grew up on, if somebody died, like people could come in the night and just like take the body, take their, and so you stand guard when somebody dies. You like stand guard over them. So Saavik's doing that. Like Saavik is such an amazing character in these books that is just pretty much lost in the movie. It's also kind of cool because they change actors, like. It's Kirstie Alley in Star Trek 2, and then it's somebody else in Star Trek 3. So as I'm reading this, like I just see Kirstie Alley in it. So it's like, oh, we get more scenes of like the original Saavik, and then when it sort of picks up where like the movie picks up, then like in my mind it just kind of changed over to that like new actress. So
and you have 4 lined up, right?
Yeah, I have 4. I started reading 4, and again, there's like more. I love the connective tissue because. Again, like Lean and Mean worked for The Wrath of Khan, so I think they try to do Lean and Mean for the movies, and so Star Trek 4 is Lean and Mean also, but there's all this great connective tissue that gets you from Star Trek 3 into like the story of Star Trek 4.
I was planning on giving Star Trek 4 a rewatch as well.
Oh, because it's like I start reading this, and I'm like, now did that happen in the movie or not? I don't remember. And then I watched the movie, and it's like, no, that's not in the movie. There's Or there'll be some things where it's like, because there was some stuff with like with Uhura where she like Uhura is like sort of helps them get back, like when they're stealing the Enterprise. Oh, here's and she helps them get on the Enterprise, and then they're like, okay, Uhura, come on with us. And she's like, no, I got stuff to do here. And then she goes to the Vulcan embassy. The Starfleet police are chasing her, and then Sarek, Spock's father, gives her sanctuary at the Vulcan embassy, and then takes her to Vulcan. And so I was kind of like, okay, did she just get back on the ship with them in the movie and stuff? But in the movie, like none of that stuff happens. But in the movie, she does she beams them up and she's like, I'll meet you at the rendezvous. And then she's on Vulcan at the end of the movie. So there's that. But another thing, when they come into Space Dock and Sulu's gonna, and they tell, Kirk he can't have the Enterprise and stuff like that. In the book, they're going to dismantle the Enterprise. And like Scotty's pissed, Kirk's pissed, everybody's pissed, but they're like, look, it's been through, like it's completely beaten up. It's not worth the money to rebuild it. It's old to begin with. We have this new technology that's going into the Excelsior, and so
decommission.
Yeah, they're going to decommission it and take it apart. It's kind of like when your insurance company's like, it's you not
totaled
you totaled it. It's not, they totaled it. So that added another thing where they're like, okay, so the Enterprise is just done. Like whatever. So they're going to dismantle it. So then they save it to go on its last mission, and then it gets like destroyed.
He hits a deer with it. He's like, it's an act of God.
Yeah.
Like,
so I mean, and again, there's a ton more stuff that happens in this that's so great. So you're in for a treat with this.
This is awesome. I cannot wait.
Yeah.
I gotta crack it. Like, I don't know what I'm gonna read in 2025. It's gonna top Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
Yeah,
it's probably gonna be another Star Trek.
Yeah, read you read Star Trek 2 and Star Trek 3 back to back. They do feel like one big again. There's all this connective tissue. They just flow one right into the other. So I'm Tom Scioli, author of Godzilla's Monsterpiece Theater. Issue 3 is in stores now, so go pick it up.
I'm Matt Zeoli.
And we'll see you next time.
Beam me up.
Yeah, beam me up. We'll see you next time with some more Star Trek talk.